So I'm going to show you how I review a PPC for a board game. And a PPC is a pre-production copy, also called a pre-production sample or a white box sample. This is a PPC for Chucky, and you'll notice it's very nice and the components punch out and you can play the game with this. And that's what you would want to do. You would want to play the game with the final art if possible, but not all pre-production samples look like this. Some PPCs look like this because this is a white box sample, and this kind of sample always comes with this as well. So this shows you what the color version of it will look like, and this shows you what the components are like. You'll notice that they have punch outs and everything, but does not have the printing, so you could not play with this. So you'll need to print out your own final art version. And like with everything on here, you will probably have played this a bunch and checked the text and all that before you get to this point a million times, but you need to check it again now because this is your last chance before things go to print. Once something is printed, it is much more expensive to fix any issues. So this is the point where you need to double and triple check all your things. And what you're checking for usually are color, quantity, size, readability, usability, and any missing or erroneous things. So we're going to look at our box cover and box back here. We're going to check all of our text here. And again, you will have checked it before, but you need to check it again now. And your icons and your other pieces of information. Because sometimes when you give the printer the PDF and they load it up into their software for their printer, a layer will get shifted and you'll end up with something that's just completely blank. You'll have a box here that's blank, and you'll need to call that out and be like, this is missing. That's why you need somebody who's used to looking at these things to check this stuff. So it can't be just some random person who has never seen this game before. They need to be somebody who has interacted with this before so that they know when it is missing. So you're going to check all that information here on your box cover. You're going to check that the colors look the way that you expected them to, and that it's the size you expect it to be. On the box back, we've got a bunch of text here, and the most important thing down here is your UPC and your SKU, as well as your legalese. These are things where if they are incorrect, it is an issue to sell the product. So that would have to be fixed. If you went to print with this and you printed several thousand units of this and that was wrong, you would have to either reprint the box back entirely or more likely print a sticker and have the factory stick it on there. Both of those things cost you more money. You want to fix that at this point. So while everything is important, catching a random typo in the middle of this thing is not something that you would be like, oh, I need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to fix that, because it doesn't affect whether the product can be used or can be sold. This affects whether the product can be sold. An issue with the rules or the components, if something was missing, affects whether the product can be used. So random typos in a lot of places don't really hurt that. It makes the product look less nice, and you obviously want to catch that. But while everything is important, some things are more important. The things that affect whether you can use or sell the product are more important. So you're going to check all of that around here and double triple check this little part on your box right here. So these are punch boards for the game. So this is a punch board front and this is its back. And if you're looking at these tokens here, these are their backs, and you'll notice they're on opposite sides of the punch board from each other. So this is the front to this is back. And if you're ever not sure, you just hold it along this line and you can see that we've got these tokens here, we've got the tokens there, and that they line up. So you want to make sure that everything is present here, is the color you expect it to be, that no important elements are lost in the color behind them. So for example, sometimes you'll see white text on a yellow background, and on your computer screen, it'll look okay. You'll be able to discern those things. But when it gets printed out, it'll be too washed out and there'll be too much bleed between the colors, and it'll be hard to read that text from across the table or maybe even in front of you. So do check for those things. Even though you checked for them before on your computer screen is different from the printed product. Similarly, when you're looking at things on a computer screen, a lot of times you're looking at it 10 times the size of what it's going to be printed out. So a good tip is to keep playing cards or other common component size things next to your monitor, so that when you're looking at a card, you can hold that normal playing card up to the screen and then resize the image on your screen to check if something is readable when it's on your computer screen before it gets to this step. It's always nice if things are already the way you expect them to be before we get to this point. So we need to make sure that all our things are there. And again, we've got some things that are more important than others. In this game, you could be missing a 5 coin, and that's not going to really affect whether or not you can play this game or not. However, if you are missing one of these are components that are specific to the players. So they are player count restricted components. And if you are missing one of these, you would need to proxy up a fake one in order to play with the full player count. So those are more important components. So make sure you count all your components, but again, some are more important than others. Make sure things are the right size. I'll cover that more here in a moment, but double check all your things and make sure that they are, color, quantity, size, readable, usable, and if there's anything missing. So these are cards, and this is the fronts and these are the backs of the cards. So like we did with that other sheet, we were folding it. If you're not used to the fact that stuff on the left side of the fronts corresponds to the right side of the backs, you can put them back to back and be like, okay, so we've got all these basket style cards with this one extra here, and then we'll put our finger here and fold it back and be like, oh, we've got that whole line and then one of those there. And you can do that with any of these things. I'll show you that more here in a second. But again, we want to check that all the cards are present, that everything that's meant to be readable is readable and usable. And and with cards, because each of these is a separate object, you need to think about, oh, well, did any card get shoved off onto what would be a separate sheet over here? Am I missing that sheet? Sort of thing. So you check all your cards, and you check these components. These are player screens. Again, we have to make sure that we have the right for the player count and that the colors are correct. This is the back side of it. You notice we've got over here on the right, we've got this brown player screen. On the left, we've got the brown player screen. You can just, if you're not used to that, or if you have any uncertainty, you can put them back to back and be like, brown player screen, brown player screen. This has a lot of text on it. Readability is important. These are player aids. The player will have it in their hand or right next to them, so it's okay for this font to be the size of font in a book. If this was on a component that would be across the table from you, like on the game board, I would want this font to be larger, like this title case font. Is a larger font. I would want it to be closer to that size so that it is readable across the table, especially if it's important for you to make decisions with that in the game. Again, check all of this for typos and that everything is present and that the most recent changes are reflected on these components. So we've got more cards here. We double check everything. You can see how we've got 6 objective cards here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 objective cards there, and so we know that if I did these back to back, they would line up. And we've got 2 recipes up here and 2 recipes there. You'll notice these recipes have a name, and it's in a font that's like a scripty font, and it's only flavor. You never need to be able be able to read that to play the game. So it's okay that it's not quite as readable as some of the other fonts in the game, because it doesn't affect your ability to make decisions. It is only flavor for the game. Same with the illustrations, right? You don't necessarily need to even realize that these are people at picnic tables, right? In order to play this game. It's nice if you can, but it is not required. So these are more cards. You check your quantity, your colors, and so forth. This is the board. So this is the front of the board, and this is the back of the board, which is the solo side. This is a puzzled board, which means it's put together like a jigsaw puzzle. There are 5 pieces, the 4 corners, and the centerpiece. When you turn it to solo mode, the centerpiece is actually not flipped over. This piece stays the same for both modes, and you just flip over to the different corner pieces for the solo mode. So you again check your text, check your icons, make sure everything is present, is the right color, is not being washed out by the colors behind it, and so forth. And this is actually a good time to talk a little bit more about size of things. So we've got our white box sample here. And while we're talking about the board, so this is the board they sent for the white box sample, and this is incorrect because this is a folding board and does not have the cutouts for the peppers or the lines for the puzzled board. So this is incorrect, and they will need to send me a corrected version of this. You should always make sure that you've seen a corrected version of what you need. You can't just be like, oh, this is wrong, and then take their word for it being changed. You need to see it. That is important for this step. So we've got components here that will go on this board. So for example, we've got these cards, and we're going to count these cards as well as the cards on the sheet, but we're going to count the quantity of these and the quantity of our punch boards and so forth. But we're also going to use these to make sure that they fit in all the spaces where cards would go on this. Similarly, we have some of our non-printed components. A lot of times you'll get sent these separately from the PPC, but it's important to check that these are the right color and quantity as well as the right size. So these go right here, and we're making sure that these fit where they're supposed to. In theory, you have specified this to the factory beforehand, but sometimes the factory will make changes without telling you, and that's what you don't want. It's important for you to expect and want the factory to advise you of anything that they think is wrong and not just try and fix it themselves. For example, I've seen factories take a board and be like, oh, we think this is incorrect, this board is the wrong size, we're going to just resize it for you because it's faster and easier. You don't want that to happen. You want them to call it out to you that they think it's wrong, and for you to okay that change and or provide different files if needed. That's for a couple of different reasons. You don't want them creating issues that you didn't expect because they were fixing things that you didn't want them to fix. But also because if, for example, your graphic designer or illustrator did something that was not compatible with the rest of the game, you want it to be called out. So, for example, if the graphic designer had submitted everything in RGB, it needs to be in CMYK for print, and you want the factory to say, hey, this file was not in CMYK, so that you can fix that, but also so that you know that the graphic designer or whoever submitted a file with an issue on it, so that you can hopefully reduce the likelihood of that happening in the future. So similar to size things here, so this board will have holes like these in the middle for peppers to go in. Since I can't test that because the board is incorrect in this white box sample, I do have these little punch outs from the punch boards that do have the same size pepper hole in them. So I do get to take the pepper samples, these are plastic peppers, and make sure that they fit into the holes nicely. And they do, and that's good. So it is more likely that once we get the fixed board sample that they will also fit correctly into the holes on that. So that's another checking for sizing thing that is important, is take all your components that are supposed to fit somewhere, whether it's physically inside or just on top of the graphic of something, and make sure that they are still the correct size and shape and so forth that you are expecting. Again, go through all your elements, make sure everything is the way you expect it to be, and that the game is playable with this final art. So let me get some of this off the table here. And we will look at the rules here. And in theory, you will have gotten to this point and have read these rules 1,000 times, and you'll still need to read them again and make sure that everything is where you expect it to be. This is a high likelihood of versioning issues because rules are the thing that tends to change the most while you're developing the game. Go find whatever the most recent changes to the rules were and see if they're present here, as well as reading everything and making sure that all your pages are here and all your information and graphics are where they're supposed to be. So that's a very quick overview of how to review a PPC for a board game. There are obviously other things you might check for, but the most common things you're checking for are color, quantity, size, readability, usability, and missing or erroneous things.